we will be explaining how we downloaded our model and deployed it using Flask and Docker. After training our model in Azure ML Studio, we registered the model in Azure ML model registry and downloaded. The download came as a zip file which contains three key components: the scoring file, which is responsible for model initialization and prediction, and then the model.pickle file, which contains the serialized trained model, and then the conda environmental file, which is the environmental configuration file specifying the dependencies used in the model. We extracted these files and created them to create our Dockerized Flask application. So now let's look into each file. First of all, we created an requirements.txt file which lists all the Python libraries which are required to run our model and the API. The first one is Azure AutoML-trained runtime, which provides the runtime support for the trained AutoML model. And then the inference schema, which validates and enforces the input and output schema of the API, and then Azure ML default, which helps in deployment and logging, and some other libraries like XGBoost, Prophet, NumPy, Pandas for model training. We have also imported Flask for creating REST API interface for production. Now let's move to the Docker file, which is the blueprint of our container. So Docker file is basically a text file which contains the set of instructing the Docker on how to build the Docker image. So the first line is from Python and the version. So this sets a lightweight Python as a base image, and then we are specifying the working directory inside the container. Then we copy our environment and the requirements file. Next we install all the dependencies using pip install -r requirements.txt. After which we will be creating a folder to run our model and copy our trained model file there. We also then copy our application file and the scoring file into the container. We then set the environmental variable which tells the scoring script where to locate the model. Finally, we expose the port 5000 for API communication and start our Flask application with the command python app.py. So this is usually runs the application once the container starts to run. And next file is app.py, which is the entry point of the application. It uses Flask to create the predict endpoint for sending production request. So first it imports all the libraries like Flask, Pandas, Joblab, and then import the init and run function from the scoring file. The init function actually loads the model into the memory when the application starts, and then when a post request is sent to the predict endpoint, the app converts the input JSON into a Pandas data frame, passes it into the run function, and returns the production result as a JSON. Finally, it runs the Flask server on the local host on port 5000, allowing access from outside the container. The next file is scoring file, which is a file automatically generated by the Azure ML Studio, and it is responsible for model loading and production logic. It imports all the key ML libraries used by the model. The init function loads the model from the path specified by the environmental variable, which is specified in the Docker file. The run function accepts the input data and checks whether the method is predict or predict proba, and runs the model and returns the result. We have also defined the input and output schemas to validate the incoming request. Now all the files are ready. We will be building the Docker image. So for demonstration purpose, we have again created the Docker image which we have built before, but with using the tag demo. So that this creates an identical image but labeled for demo purpose. Docker tags actually help differentiate image versions, for example latest v1 or demo, even if they contain the same code. So now it's actually downloading the libraries which we specified in the requirements.txt file, which will be used in the runtime environment. Now let's see the Docker image which we have created before. So they are AutoML service Flask and AutoML service Flask -light. So these are the two images which we have created for our ML model. To run this, we will be using the docker run command. If a run command docker run -p 5000 AutoML service Flask -light and latest. So this command runs the container and maps the port 5000 on our local system to the port 5000 inside the Docker container. And if everything is correct, the Flask starts successfully and we see the message running on the port which we have specified. Yes, it's now running successfully. And now to test the API, let's go to Postman. In Postman, specify the method at post and specify the endpoint, and then in body select the raw and specify and give the request and request data. So here we have defined crop type as wheat and crop days, soil moisture, temperature and humidity, these are the data which are collected by the sensors. And then we have specified the global parameter specifying which method to use. Now hit the send button. The request will be sent to the model and we got the result as 0, which means there is no need to irrigate the crop as of now. This shows our application is running successfully and dockerized well.